Hey there, and welcome to Create a Place podcast. I'm Kristina York, co-founder and principal at Create & Co. Architecture and Interior Design Studio. I'll also be your guide to workplace design, culture, and well-being. We've got a lot of great guests coming up, so grab your coffee, tea, or cocktail and pull up a seat for some great conversations and some valuable takeaways. Hey guys, welcome to Create a Place podcast. I am here today with one of my favorite thought leaders, Rex Miller.
Thank you.
He's a notable author and life coach, business coach, has a lot to say and some really great insights in the world of business, personal coaching, and also particularly the workplace, which is kind of what we're here to focus on today.
Yep.
And we're here at Cornet Global Summit 2024. And thank you so much for taking an hour out of your day
Yeah, you're
and
welcome.
your busy schedule to talk to me. And just give me just a minute on what you've been up to lately, because I know you're all over the place all the time. And any highlights the last couple weeks or so?
Well, so last few weeks, so this is day 13 on hopefully my last big road trip for the year. But I'm part of the Lean Construction Institute. Mm-hmm. So I had 2 half-day workshops on advanced partnering, how to accelerate teams through what I call that forming, storming loop. Mm-hmm. And they all go through it, but a lot of teams get stuck in that. And then a large project where it was a real partnering session, a very complex wastewater treatment project in San Diego. And then Miami is a client going through succession planning.
Wow.
And then we've got Cornet. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks.
Runs the gamut. Your head must be spinning right now.
Yeah, no, it's all good because what I enjoy is the downtime of travel. Mm-hmm. I like to get in my head a lot. So flying lets me get in my head. Oh, yeah. Finding a good restaurant to hang out at or a good bookstore. I enjoy those things. I missed the Halloween craziness in Miami.
Oh, yeah.
And which was a good thing. I was told not to be on the streets after dark.
Oh, okay.
So
you just decided to get out of there altogether.
Right, I did.
That's probably not a bad thing if you're trying to move on to a productive weekend.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, speaking of being at Cornet and kind of what you've been up to, I know that you're going to be speaking on Sunday on a panel.
Yes.
We have one other person that you're speaking with. What do you think we're looking at this year? And, we're just getting ready to get started, kicking off today.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of sessions and, I'm excited and apprehensive and,
Right.
Are we still going to be in the same loop we've been in the last few years? What do you think is going to happen?
Answer. We're in the same loop.
Oh, no.
It's kind of the same universe. We keep going through RTO, hybrid, work-life balance, millennials, boomers, kind of the same, and people are trying to find a different way to spin that story.
Yeah.
But we still haven't gotten out of it, and we're still reacting to what hit us.
Right.
And I work with a clinical psychologist. His name is Dr. Jernigan, West Coast, specializes in countries that go through mass trauma, like war zones. And what I've learned from him and what we produced a workbook in like June or July of 2020 on how to prepare for the mental side of this. Mm. And he says that usually a population that goes through a mass trauma, and we've just gone through a couple,
right?
In the Carolinas and West Virginia with Hurricane Helene. It's a 7-year process to just emotionally get through it.
7 years?
7 years, yeah. Well, I know friends who went through 9/11 in New York. They still can't look at the Twin Towers without feeling triggered.
Sure.
So we don't understand trauma. And there's 2 kinds of trauma. There's actually 3 kinds. There's the one we typically associate with, which is you see something horrific, it overwhelms your system, your brain rewires. Then there is what we call vicarious trauma. That's what teachers and caregivers experience when their when their patients or the people they're working with, the victims, they're internalizing that trauma, and then it rewires the brain. But then the third kind is this long, prolonged deprivation, and that's what we went through in the pandemic. And this was a global-wide experience where things shut down for 2 years. The brain begins to rewire its survival mechanisms, and it's called a default mode network, and you can see it in a brain scan. And what happens is you can't disassociate from that feeling of fight or flight. And so as soon as it happens, it's like going back to it. And we've seen that in movies with war veterans where they hear the backfiring of a car and they hit the ground. Well, when we were going through the pandemic, up to 25% of the population experienced the kind of trauma that would create a PTSD condition. It's normally around 4%. So what we did is after 2 years, and remember the ups and downs. The first year was, we'll get through it this year, and then boom, a new strain came out and everything was shut down. And then there were all you're coming back, no you're not. You're coming back, no we're not. All of that uncertainty and the broken covenant with our employers that they're looking out for our interest, all that was broken. And then when they tried to flip the switch on, it's like asking somebody who has a broken leg that now I want you to run the marathon.
Yeah.
And so we haven't processed yet. The other thing we haven't come to terms with is that whatever culture you had as an organization before the pandemic no longer exists.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist.
Kind of starting over again. Right?
All over. Yeah.
Because we're all rewired now. And so we're all thinking about things differently.
Totally different.
Reacting.
And you value things differently.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you look at culture, I have a simple definition of culture. It's what happens when you're not there. To manage. It's the invisible attitudes, habits, values, and behaviors that really run the organization. So you value things differently. I valued things differently. I was on the treadmill of travel, and I didn't realize that missing dinner was a big deal, and got used to being home, seeing the kids, our grandson now, and thinking, you know what, I'm going to try to build in protecting that. So that's happened all across the country, and companies still think that whatever culture they had, they still have, and they don't realize. So we were talking about getting stuck in the loop. Well, part of it is going back to understanding the invisible culture that we have. And companies have 4 cultures. The aspired culture, what we think we are at our best, what we tell people we are at our best. There's the legacy culture. That's what used to make us successful no longer does. I tell a great story about that in Change Your Space, Change Your Culture with CBRE. Then there's the shadow culture. That's the leave me alone, don't bother me culture. And then there are what we call the outliers or the future travelers, the people doing things differently that give you an indicator of what could be.
Oh, yeah.
Until we understand that, no matter what we do, whatever changes, it won't stick because we don't understand the garden that we have to deal with. And organizations already have, whatever culture they have, it's either healthy or unhealthy by design or by default. And until you get that figured out, all the other stuff we're talking about is meaningless.
Yeah. So what's our solution? We can't solve all this in one chat, but where do we start with that? How do we start kind of reconciling that piece so that we can move on to the other conversations?
So have you watched the TV show Undercover Boss?
No.
Okay. So here's kind of the narrative. A boss, a CEO of a company, goes into the field as a trainee, maybe wears a disguise, but they don't know who he is.
Okay.
And he has to see how people treat each other, treat their customers, treat one another, what the training is.
And what they're saying about him.
What they're saying about him or her.
Her, yes.
Yeah, and all the benefits that they either do or do not get. And it's kind of like the Christmas story, it's the Scrooge experience where it's this big awakening of what I thought was valuable or what I thought was good for the employees actually wasn't.
Yeah.
And they have a complete change of heart. So there's an easy way of going in, and we do this with teams, and I've done it with some other organizations that are experiencing conflict and want to figure it out. And we do what we call a culture audit. And it's really simple. Finding the behaviors that make you proud. Finding the behaviors that you go, what were they thinking? And we begin to journal and capture those, but you have different people through different levels of the organization that are like secret Santas.
Okay.
They capture that. And until you understand who we really are, you can't begin to shift it. You can't begin accentuating who we are at our best, articulating who we are at our best, weeding out the things that get in our way and hurt us. And that's granular work. It's ideal work for facilities people to do and HR people to partner on.
Yeah.
But
Because they're in the heart of it,
they see it all.
They're boots on the ground every day, all day. And I, not to tangent here, but I feel like that's a huge sector, group of people that gets overlooked all the time, and they're not involved in the decisions enough. Their voices are not heard. Facilities people, those are the people that are going to know the most about how the employees work, what they do,
right.
how they act, and use the space. And so, yes, I agree with that. I think we really need to tune into that.
So you've done work with Sam's Club. Well, Sam Walton, what did he used to do all the time? He would travel out, see how people are setting up the aisles and the merchandising, talk to the people.
He was very involved.
Yeah, and J.W. Marriott, every letter that he would handwrite a response back. So having that granular level of who we really are, who we are at our best, getting back to those basics is part of what we need to do.
Yeah.
I think, again, going back to facilities people, I like to call them corporate chiropractors.
Yeah.
Because they're at the intersection of all the misalignments. If IT can't get along with security or departments don't get along, they experience all that.
Yeah.
And we can use design and space to realign the whole behaviors of an organization.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. We have a lot of work ahead of us.
We do.
I think.
Yeah.
Maybe what are the first steps of that? I think it starts with leadership, right? And where are those linchpins, they're going to, kind of open up the floodgates, or at least, give us a peek into where we can start kind of tackling some of these issues that are really going to be necessary before we can get to the meat of all the other change that needs to happen in the future, right?
Yeah. And managers are either the linchpin or the Achilles heel.
Yes.
And we already know, Gallup tells us that only 18% of managers are those naturally wired or trained to be developmental coaching kind. That the other 78% are task managers. They can delegate, assign, troubleshoot, hold accountability. And then the pandemic happened and we didn't see each other.
Right.
So if we're visible, right here, there's a lot I can direct or, nuanced through here, do it this way, or here, do it that way. But now we can't see each other. And so those managers are burning out at a higher level. And they're having to become life coaches.
Yes.
And they were never trained to do that. I mean, look at teachers too. Same thing with teachers.
Yeah.
The whole mental health side of kids and all of that. The teaching world, the burnout rate there is huge for the same reason. And then you talk to healthcare people, hospitals, that the behaviors that they're having to deal with now are just, out of the norm. They're violent, they're abusive. Nobody signed up for that.
Right.
Nobody's trained for that. So unless we begin giving some reinforcement or some training, we're going to continue to go through this until, there will be a natural working out of it. But,
Sure.
But we're coming out of this pandemic, and we're not ready yet. We're not whole again. We're not put together again. We're still we've got this uncertainty going on, and we see just how polarized everybody is.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, that's one word for it, to watch it unfold. And That is a big pet peeve of mine, is watching, these managers come up. They bring them up because they're really good at what they do, but they're not upskilling
Classic
them
mistake.
in, the soft skills, that they need in order to be these life coaches that nobody ever signed up to be, and I guess that's probably one of the biggest things that's happening right now, is we can't address some of these other issues until we get to the heart of that. And we're so busy talking about, are we magnetizing or mandating? Are we, are we 3 days a week? Or are we 2 days a week? And some of these conversations just don't even seem to make sense. But I think people are grasping at them because they're the only things that they can control, right? I mean, is that what you're finding? Or at least that's my feeling, is that feel like these are the only things I can control right now, is I can tell you to come in to work 3 days a week, because I don't know how to manage you when you're at home, because I don't have those skills, and frankly I just can't handle it anymore. I can't even get my own job done, let alone keep tabs on you 5 people, because I don't know how to do that anymore. So where do we begin, to start putting all that back together? I mean, that's a big undertaking, and do we take out, do you have to kind of bypass or kind of put on hold some of these other decisions for a hot minute while you just kind of keep working on what's happening internally? Can we not focus on whether or not you're going to mandate us to all come back 5 days a week in January 1? That seems like the least of our worries right now, in my opinion.
It completely is. Well, and part of that's understandable, because when there's anxiety, the natural reaction is to do something to give you a sense of control. But when you do that, you create the next problem, and it's a bigger problem. It's called adaptive leadership, and there's lots of good literature and work around that. It's I worked for a consulting firm here in DC for 3 years, and they were Jungian psychologists. Yes, family systems psychologists. So what we learned is that when there's anxiety in the system, fear, uncertainty, jockeying for positions, and there are stressors, then they act out in different ways. I'm not coming back to work. And so think of the parent, well, you're not going to clean your room. Well, doggone it, I told you, and you're not going to be able to do this. You won't be able to go out on Saturday. They sneak out of the house anyway. So this is the kind of dynamic we've gotten into, because the parent's anxiety, they're trying to deal with that, and they don't have that healthy relationship back again. And so when we look at problems, we've got symptoms, the pain points, and that's all we're talking about, pain points, and how to deal with the pain points. But then you have what we call underlying causes. And those are misalignments, clarity about roles and goals, direction, the hierarchy. Those are underlying causes of behavior challenges. But in the bottom of it all are relational issues of trust and distrust. And that's the work we've got to do. We've got to rebuild that trust again. But when you look at, the Bay Area, when technology companies eliminate 15,000 jobs overnight because they can do it more efficiently with AI or doing whatever, then you're not going to get that trust. So we're back into the tug of war that we keep having. And we keep seeing that tug of war. So now managers can do it on a micro level. And managers can build that trust with the team. And even though I can't control what the organization does, and I can't control the outside, we can control how we treat each other, how we get our work done, how we support each other. We can do it at a micro level.
I agree. I feel like those are the areas that we need to be focusing on, is that manager level, because that's where the change is going to happen. It's not always going to come from, the C-suite, and as much as they would like to, either mandate that or inspire that.
It's never going to
It's not going to do that. It may be coming from it, but that's not going to be what's effective at the manager level. They're not the ones that are in the day-to-day and really understanding what's happening, in the field or at the office or wherever that is. And I agree with that, so how do we empower, that management level? How do we get those folks re-engaged And maybe that's, that's part of what I would love to try to do, in this
Sure,
podcast,
right.
and just getting going with this. But it's, that's one of the passions that I have, is to, kind of bring to light some of these issues and have conversations about it that, even if you walk away with one little tidbit that helps you, but maybe it's not just all geared towards the C-suite. It's not all geared towards, HR, as important that it is. I want, managers to understand that they're being seen and they're being heard, that level. I want facilities to understand that they are too being seen and heard. And I would love for us, in our space, designers and, consultants and leaders, in that realm, to be that bridge, to be that advocate and that guide, if you will, to try to bring, that education and the hope, if nothing else, some hope, that there are some solutions. It's just going to come from a different place than people normally think it's going to come from in an organization.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, well, so don't count on the government to help you. Don't count on leadership to help you. I mean, truly.
Count on your community, your tribe,
Or yourself.
Yourself.
Yeah, so a lot of people will kind of say, I can't do this because I don't have the resources or I don't have the buy-in. But that is the victim mindset. The whole resilience thing is know what you can control, know what you can't control, focus on what you can. You can make a difference. My story is that, well, sometimes desperation helps, but I took a role as a VP of a furniture dealership in 1999, moved from DC to Dallas, had a 10-year contract, and was going to share in the profits of the company so that by 2010 I could retire comfortably. And of course that didn't happen. But what did happen was the dot-com crash. And we lost 70% of our revenue in a 3 to 4 month period.
Wow.
About 7 months into this thing, I come into the office and my email's not working. And I think it's a technical issue. So I go to Walt and I say, Walt, can you help me with my email? And he says, you need to talk to the owner.
Oh boy.
So I go in, and I knew the owner. I've known the owner for a long time, and we were going to kind of ride out together, ride into the sunset together. He's all antsy and upset, and he takes the contract, just rips it up in front of me. He says, we don't need a VP of sales, we need sales. So you got two choices. You can leave today, or you can come back Monday in sales as a commission salesperson. So I went from a salary that at least kept me from going underwater to straight commission.
Wow.
Yes. Nobody's buying furniture. Even in good times, the sales cycle for a salesperson is, 8, 9, 18 months, could be any of that. And so I told him, I said, I believe I was brought down here for a purpose. I made a commitment to you. I'll just figure it out. I got to figure it out. So Monday I show up to the sales meeting. It was one of the most awkward environment. When somebody
They were
has
thinking you weren't going to show up.
Well, or they were wondering, because I was their boss Friday.
Yeah.
And I had hired many of them, and now I'm this kind of disgraced individual who walks in. And it was, it's kind of like when you meet somebody who has a terminal disease, how do you react? And I just started focusing on what I could control. And I went back to my roots in construction. I started as a project manager in 1978 for what's now AT&T. And I said, okay, no one's buying furniture, but there's this new product that's a modular wall solution. Well, it wasn't new, but Hayworth bought the company, so it was SMED. And I said, I'm going to focus on that. So I got a client that was they had a project that would be worth a $7 million sales back in the early 2000s, keep me from going bankrupt. I was within a week of bankruptcy 5 times. I was not a good dad. I was not a good husband. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am today. And I was just struggling. But I had a conviction that this product would work. And there was one problem. We were always 15 to 20% higher than regular drywall.
Oh, yes.
So I'd gotten over the hurdle of the owner saying, we like the product, we like the solution, and then 3 weeks before the decision, the CFO comes in and says, if it's a penny more than conventional construction, we're not going to do it. So inside, I was thinking the universe is against me. I'm that close. And if I don't get this, I'm done. Everything's done. And, the marriage wasn't at a great place at that time. So it was pretty dark. But I went to the project manager and I said, do me a favor. Ask Turner Construction to do a pre-construction estimate with the walls in, without. Give me 3 weeks with the trades. Let's see what we can do. So I followed my conviction that it shouldn't be more. Mm-hmm. And the end of the story is that we came in 85 cents a square foot less than conventional construction.
Nice.
It was a 20-week schedule that we took 4 weeks out of the schedule. And all of a sudden, boom, I said, it's the system, it's the process that's messed up.
Oh.
So that then led to proposing to Hayworth, hey, let's get people together and talk about the construction process that is so screwed up. Let's see if we can make it better.
Yeah.
That then led to a book. That book led to the Cornet Global Innovator Award. And all of a sudden, I'm moving in a different direction. But the underlying thing was I was trying to solve my own problem.
Yeah.
And everybody has the same thing. It's the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. It's the red pill or the blue pill. You're going to take the risk and trust your conviction, or you're going to try to play it safe. And the challenge that managers have is they know what's right, they know what would be good for their team, but they don't have the confidence to do the right thing and make a healthy team.
Hey friends, if you enjoyed today's episode, please join in the conversation at Create a Place Podcast on LinkedIn or Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe. We're so glad you tuned in to Create a Place and look forward to seeing you next time.